You feel like time is slipping through your fingers. Days pass, but nothing changes. You scroll, you obey, you survive, but you do not live. Deep inside, you know you are wasting your life, but you don't know how to stop. In this video, we will expose the psychological traps that keep you passive, broken, and invisible, and we will show you how to rise above them, like a king who reclaims his stolen crown. A man who wakes without purpose is already conquered before the day begins. He is like a city without walls, open to every influence, every distraction, every seduction. The mind becomes foggy, and with it the will decays. This man still breathes, still moves, still talks, but he has already been dethroned in spirit. He has no vision, no inner standard, no authority over himself, and so the world begins to shape him bit by bit. First his habits, then his desires, then his values. Eventually, even his thoughts are not his own. He becomes easy to rule. His passivity makes him a perfect citizen in the empire of the mediocre. The rulers of this world have no need to enslave him. He enslaves himself. He gives away his attention to meaningless entertainment. He gives away his strength to comfort. He gives away his time, the most royal of all assets, to things that neither challenge nor elevate him. When he senses something is wrong, he doesn't revolt. He numbs. He drinks, scrolls, he talks about change, but never moves. And so his life begins to erode, not through tragedy, but through slow decay, death by softness. He begins to look around and blame the world. He blames society. He blames the economy. He blames his parents. But what he doesn't see is that the true enemy lies within, the part of him that surrendered responsibility, the part of him that chose to drift instead of direct. That part is the traitor inside the gates. Until that inner coward is named and defronted, the man will continue wasting his life. Day after day, year after year, pretending that one day things will change on their own. The psychology of such a man is marked by quiet desperation. He may laugh in public and wear a mask of strength, but beneath it lies shame. Deep, silent shame. He knows he was made for more. He knows he has potential, but potential without action is a curse. It becomes a mirror that haunts him, and the longer he avoids the pain of waking up, the heavier the shame becomes. Eventually, he stops dreaming. He stops believing. He begins to mock the very things he once wanted. This is not humility. It is self-betrayal dressed as realism. Without a direction, even intelligence becomes dangerous. The smarter he is, the better he becomes at justifying his own decline. He intellectualizes his excuses. He turns laziness into philosophy. He becomes a priest of stagnation, preaching acceptance where there should be revolt. This is how bright men become shadows of themselves. Not because they lack talent, but because they lack command. They have no internal king to impose order, no fire to drive them, no aim to die for. And in the absence of that aim, all roads look the same. He becomes a wanderer with no war, a soldier with no sword, a man with no mission. The world respects clarity, not confusion. And when a man has no purpose, others will assign one to him. He becomes a tool for their goals, a servant to their agendas. His life is spent, but not by him. It is spent by others like borrowed currency, used and discarded. And the worst part, he thanks them for it. He is so cut off from his own worth that he sees exploitation as opportunity. He mistakes distraction for freedom. He thinks he's choosing, when in truth, he is being chosen. For a life far beneath what he is capable of, a man who seeks to rise in the world must first descend into himself. He must make war not with others, but with the parts of his own sitch that remain hidden, denied, and feared. These parts are not evil in themselves. They are powerful energies left undirected. Envy, rage, lust, pride, fear. These are not sins to be suppressed, but raw forces to be integrated. Until this is done, a man is ruled by what he refuses to see. He may speak of control, yet remain a puppet to emotions he dares not name. He may speak of virtue, yet secretly rot from suppressed desire. He wears the mask of a good man, while his shadow slowly takes the throne beneath his surface. The king archetype is not born in purity, but in fire, and the fire is within. True kingship begins when a man no longer fears looking directly at his flaws. He studies his resentment without flinching. He observes his cowardice without excuse. He stands in front of the beast and does not blink, because the man who cannot face his own darkness will always project it onto others. He will demonize the world to avoid seeing his own corruption. This is how tyrants are made, not by cruelty alone, but by unresolved weakness masters strength. Carl Jung called it the shadong, the parts of the self we exile because they don't fit the image we want to show the world. But these parts do not die. They grow in the dark, and if not brought into consciousness, they sabotage us from below. The man who suppresses his aggression becomes passive-aggressive. The man who hides his ambition becomes envious of those who strive. The man who denies his sexual drive becomes addicted in secret. The king, however, brings these impulses into the light, not to be ruled by them, but to rule over them with awareness and precision. You do not become powerful by pretending to be harmless. You become powerful by knowing exactly how dangerous you are, and choosing when, where, and how to act. This is not moral weakness. This is psychological sovereignty. The king knows his capacity for destruction, and because of that, he does not fear confrontation. He is calm because he has faced the storm inside. And those who have not done this shadow work will always crumble under pressure. They will either erupt in chaos or shrink into cowardice, because their strength is only surface deep. In the depths of the psyche, there are dragons guarding treasure. And the man who runs from his shadow also runs from his power. He stays in the shallow end of life, never claiming the gold buried in his unconscious. But the man who dares to descend into that underworld, to wrestle with the darker aspects of himself, rises not only stronger, but sovereign. His words carry weight because they are backed by integration. His presence commands respect, not because he demands it, but because he has paid for it in blood, inner blood. Shadow work is not therapy for the weak. It is warfare for the strong. It is a private battlefield where a man either dies in denial or is reborn through confrontation. The king is not afraid of darkness because he knows that the throne is built not in the light, but in the ruins of the self that was once afraid to look inward. Most men waste their life trying to look good. The king spends his life becoming whole. The modern man waits. He waits for clarity, for confidence, for some divine revelation to point him in the right direction. He convinces himself that when the perfect idea appears, when the right motivation arrives, then he will act. But this waiting is not noble. It is decay disguised as patience. No king is crowned by accident, and no life of power is stumbled upon. Purpose is not something a man finds lying around like a coin on the road. Purpose is built, hammered, shaped, and seized through deliberate and often uncomfortable action. This illusion that purpose must first feel right is a trap for the weak. The world will not hand you meaning. No empire sends out a messenger to announce your destiny. The man who becomes something is the man who begins before he feels ready. He moves without applause. He builds before he's praised. He chooses a direction and then bears the burden of shaping himself to match it. Through this process, clarity is earned, not given. A weak man reverses this order. He wants the clarity first, the confidence first, the certainty first. And so he never moves, never risks, never breaks free from the loop of wasted days. A king is not made by sitting in meditation waiting for inspiration. He is made in the tension between action and uncertainty. It is in the trial, in the friction, in the attempt, that purpose begins to take form. You do not become a warrior by thinking about battle. You become one by entering the field, by facing resistance, by bleeding and surviving. In the same way, a man becomes aligned with meaning not by sitting in comfort thinking deeply about it, but by doing what is hard, what is necessary, and discovering who he is in the process. Those who live without purpose often believe that life is unfair, meaningless, or hollow. But it is not life that lacks meaning. It is the man who lacks the courage to build it. And this is the harsh truthing. The longer you wait for a perfect calling, the more your soul atrophies. There is no perfect calling, only raw potential shaped by commitment. The man who commits to a path, even a difficult one, gains strength. The man who avoids all paths gains only regret. Waiting becomes his identity. Potential becomes his prison. And eventually, he mistakes this paralysis for wisdom. The psychology of a king is grounded in self-authorship. He does not ask the world who he is. He tells it, he acts, and then reflects. He builds, and then adjusts. And in this act of creation, purpose reveals itself, not all at once, but in layers. The forge is hot, the hammer is heavy, and the work is slow. But through this relentless crafting, the man begins to embody something deeper than mere ambition. Becomes a force. He becomes rooted. He is no longer seeking the meaning of life. He is living it. The tragic irony is that most men already have hints of their calling. They feel it in their dissatisfaction. They glimpse it in the things they envy. They hear it in the quiet voice that whispers when the noise dies down. But instead of acting, they doubt. Instead of choosing, they hesitate. And so the years pass. Their purpose is not taken from them. It is buried under their own inaction. Meanwhile, the kings of the world are not necessarily the most gifted, but the most ruthless with their time, the most committed to their path, the most unafraid to move before they feel prepared. Before a man can command others, he must first command himself. And to command oneself, he must learn to hear his own voice clearly, without the noise of the world distorting it. This cannot happen in the marketplace of opinions, nor in the crowds of agreement. It happens in isolation, in solitude, in the silence that most men fear. The modern man avoids being alone not because he loves others so deeply, but because he cannot stand being left with himself. He fills every gap with distraction, not realizing that he is drowning the very signal that could lead him to his crown. The king is not forged in company. He is forged in exile. There is a sacred loneliness that precedes power. It is not the loneliness of rejection. It is the chosen separation of the man who must define himself. Before he builds an empire, he must first walk through the wilderness. In this space, there are no mirrors, no applause, no validation. It is there, in the stillness, that he begins to confront the truth of who he is without the masks. The truth that he has imitated others. The truth he has borrowed beliefs. The truth that much of what he thought was his identity is merely adaptation, not authenticity. Most men are fragments of external voices. They speak with borrowed opinions, pursue goals that were sold to them, and avoid confrontation not because they are peaceful, but because they are unclear. Without solitude, there is no clarity, only mimicry. A man who cannot detach from the herd will always be ruled by it. Even his rebellion will be pre-approved. Even his uniqueness will be market-tested. This is why true transformation cannot begin in the crowd. It begins when the man removes himself, not out of hatred for others, but out of duty to himself. Isolation is not a retreat from the world. It is a confrontation with the self. They simply withdraw. It is that he meets his fears without interference. He meets the boredom that reveals how shallow his desires have become. He meets the shame that shows him how far he's drifted from his potential. Most men run from this confrontation. They call it depression or loneliness, but in truth, it is the initiation they never complete. They abort the process just as it begins to reveal its value. The king, however, stays. He endures, he listens. And in doing so, he becomes dangerous. Not in violence, but in clarity. There is a silent power in the man who no longer depends on others to know who he is. His decisions are no longer reactive. His words no longer seek approval. He does not need to dominate others to feel strong, because he has dominated his own inner chaos. When he re-enters the world, he moves differently. He does not chase attention, because he has already seen who he is when no one is looking. This is why his presence is heavy. He brings the weight of someone who has passed through fire, someone who has died in isolation and been reborn in sovereignty. The world does not trust those who are overly socialized. Charm can be learned, masks can be worn, but depth cannot be faked. The man who has faced himself alone radiates something ancient. He does not need to prove anything, because he has already proven it to the only judge that matters. His own soul. He is not perfect, but he is whole. He is not loud, but he is immovable. And in a world of noise, such a man is a threat, because he cannot be bought, sold, or shaken. His strength is rooted in silence, and that silence is the throne from which he rules. A man's time is not just minutes and hours. It is the currency of his life. It is the raw material from which everything is built: his body, his mind, his fortune, his legacy. And yet, most men treat it as if it were infinite, wasting it on trivial conversations, mindless entertainment, and obligations that bring no growth, no power, no purpose. This is not simply poor planning. It is self-betrayal. It is the unconscious confession that one's life is not worth guarding. A king does not allow his time to be consumed by others without judgment. His calendar is a fortress, and every hour is a soldier. He knows that once his time is gone, it cannot be retrieved, cannot be earned back, cannot be forgiven. The psychology of the modern man is conditioned to be polite, accessible, endlessly available. He answers every message, attends every event, consumes every distraction, and calls this connection. But this kind of availability is slavery in disguise. A man who is constantly interrupted, constantly responding, constantly plugged into the world has no throne. He is not living. He is reacting. He is not choosing his day. It is being chosen for him by others. He becomes a servant to the chaos he refuses to filter. His phone is his leash. His inbox is his cage. And slowly, without noticing, his soul dries up from overexposure. The king operates differently. He knows that saying yes to everything is saying no to his empire. He does not rush to reply, because his time is too precious to be fragmented by the demands of the impatient. He creates blocks of solitude, stretches of silence, long hours of undisturbed labor. This is not luxury. It is discipline. It is sacred warfare, because the kingdom of the self is built in focused time. not in fractured attention. Every minute he defends becomes a stone in the foundation of his power. Every distraction he eliminates becomes another layer of armor against mediocrity. People will resent this. They will accuse him of arrogance, of selfishness, of coldness. But this is only because they are offended by the sight of a man they cannot easily consume. The world is full of vampires. Needy, anxious, insecure people who feed off the energy of those who have not yet learned to guard it. The king has no obligation to please them. His only obligation is to protect the fire of his mission. And that fire needs time. Deep time, uninterrupted time, sovereign time. Without it, even the greatest vision turns to ash. There is no mastery without monotony. There is no creation without boredom. The man who constantly entertains himself never does anything great, because he has never learned to stay in one place long enough to give birth to something real. The king understands that most of his life be spent away from applause, away from noise, away from comfort. He does not fear this, because he knows that while others waste their hours trying to look busy, he is becoming formidable in silence. Every invitation, every distraction, every digital dopamine hit must pass through a gate. And that gate is guarded by a single question: does this serve the throne I am building? If the answer is no, it is burned. Not postponed, not entertained. Burned. Because to waste time is to insult the divine spark within, it is to crown mediocrity as king. The man who values his time is not rigid. He is precise. He is not cold. He is clear. And that clarity carves out a life that few can understand but all must respect. In the end, his results speak louder than the excuses of those who gave their time to everything but themselves. You were not born to wander endlessly through the fog of confusion, distraction, and compromise. You were born to rule. First over your own mind, then over the shape of your life. But rulership is not granted. It is seized. And it is seized through a brutal process by confronting the parts of yourself you fear, by taking deliberate steps without guarantees, by choosing solitude over noise, and by protecting your time like a crown that must not be touched. Most men waste their lives not because they lack talent, but because they lack direction. They decay quietly, politely, waiting for permission to become something. But the world does not hand out thrones. It only responds to those who claim them. To stop wasting your life is not merely a motivational idea. It is a psychological revolution. You must kill the passive self, awaken the inner sovereign, and rise each day as if your crown depends on it. Because it does. The king is not a myth. He is what emerges when you stop apologizing for your hunger, stop bargaining with your demons, and stop spending your soul on things that do not matter. Your time is sacred. Your pain is fuel. Your silence is gold. And your purpose, your real purpose, is forged through fire not found in comfort. Now choose. Remain asleep with the herd, or rise alone and rule.